In this video from ITFreeTraining, I will look at some of the planning required to perform an in-place upgrade of Windows Server to Windows Server 2012 or Windows Server 2012 R2. This video will look at when you can and cannot perform an in-place upgrade, which upgrade paths are available, and which features are no longer available, depending on which operating system you upgrade to. An in-place upgrade is when the operating system is upgraded so that all the software, applications, and documents are preserved in the upgrade process. When you perform an in-place upgrade, you do risk taking any problems with the previous operating system over to the new operating system. For this reason, some administrators prefer to perform a clean install and manually reinstall the applications they require, and then copy over the documents and settings from the previous operating system. When you purchase an upgrade, you receive the right to install that software at a cheaper price based on you owning a previous copy of that software. In some cases, you may be eligible for an upgrade price. However, there is no in-place upgrade available. For example, if you attempt to upgrade from 32-bit to 64-bit, when this occurs, you will need to perform a clean install, but will still be eligible to pay for the upgrade price. For this reason, if you want to perform an in-place upgrade, when purchasing an upgrade, take note of your current operating system and what you are upgrading to so you ensure that an in-place upgrade is supported. Otherwise, you may be purchasing an upgrade that does not support an in-place upgrade. In some cases, an in-place upgrade is not supported and your only choice is a migration. A migration is when the settings, files, or roles are moved between one server and another. Traditionally, a migration generally involved moving all of these to the destination server, but with Windows Server 2012 you can move individual items. For example, if you had an old server that was running DHCP and DNS, an in-place upgrade would allow you to upgrade the operating system to the new operating system without too much effort, assuming everything went smoothly. Now let us consider you have two servers. You want to move DHCP to one server and DNS to the other. With a migration, this is possible. You may wonder why I would make this point in a video about upgrading. The point to remember is that Microsoft has done a lot with improving the ability to migrate items from one server to another. For this reason, it may be worth considering a migration even if an in-place upgrade is supported. Although a little more work, an in-place upgrade does risk inheriting any problems with the previous operating system. If you migrate to a clean install of Windows Server, you do not carry with you any of these existing problems. If you are interested in performing a migration, see our video on migration. I only mention this as, in Windows Server 2012, there is more support for migrations, making the process easier than before, which may make you reconsider an in-place upgrade when it is available. Before I look at the in-place upgrade paths that are available, I will first look at what upgrades are not supported. First, no 32-bit or 32-bit to 64-bit upgrades are supported. Windows Server 2012 does not have a 32-bit version, so there is no 32-bit version to upgrade to. If you are running a 32-bit version of Windows Server, you will need to perform a migration in order to get to Windows Server 2012, since an in-place upgrade between different architecture is not supported, like 32-bit to 64-bit. Next, the edition must be a licensed version. This means no pre-release to manufacture, preview, or evaluation editions are supported. Next, there is no upgrade from the Itanium edition of Windows Server. This is because there is no Itanium edition for Windows Server 2012. Next, you cannot perform an in-place upgrade to a different language. If, for example, you are running the English version of Windows Server, you cannot upgrade to the French version of Windows Server 2012. In order to perform an in-place upgrade, you require Windows Server 2008 or above. If you are upgrading to Windows Server 2012 R2, you will require Windows Server 2008 R2. Previous operating systems are not supported. A workaround is to upgrade the existing operating system to a supported system and then upgrade that operating system to Windows Server 2012. The last in-place upgrade that is not supported is one which changes the interface, for example, from Core to Full. Once the upgrade is complete, there is nothing stopping you from removing the interface or installing the full interface. If you want to perform one of these upgrades, it just means adding an extra step after the upgrade. If you are planning to perform an in-place upgrade from Windows Server 2008 or Windows Server 2008 R2 to Windows Server 2012, the choices are quite simple. If you are running Windows Server 2008 or Windows Server 2008 R2 Standard or Enterprise editions, you can upgrade to either Windows Server 2012 Standard or Data Center. Windows Server 2008 and 2012 both have a Data Center edition, so this is a straight upgrade to the corresponding edition. The last edition is the Web Edition. This edition can be upgraded to the Standard Edition. It should also be pointed out that before the in-place upgrade can be performed, you first need to install Service Pack 2 on Windows Server 2008 and Service Pack 1 on Windows Server 2008 R2. If you attempt to perform an in-place upgrade without those service packs installed, the installer will only be able to perform a clean install. If you want to upgrade to Windows Server 2012 R2, the upgrade paths are the same, except that you cannot upgrade from Windows Server 2008. You must be running Windows Server 2008 R2 with Service Pack 1 installed. The workaround is to upgrade to Windows Server 2008 R2 first, and then perform the upgrade to Windows Server 2012 R2. If you are already running Windows Server 2012 and want to upgrade to Windows Server 2012 R2, there are only two in-place upgrade paths available. If you are running Windows Server 2012 Standard, you can upgrade to Windows Server 2012 R2 Standard or Data Center. If you are running the Data Center edition of Windows Server 2012, you can perform an in-place upgrade to Windows Server 2012 R2 Data Center. In-place upgrades for Essentials and Foundation are not supported. If you find that you have purchased an upgrade license and there is no upgrade path from that server, you can perform a migration. I will cover migrations in a later video. Before upgrading to a new operating system, it is important to know which features have been removed. For the most part, there have not been too many features removed in Windows Server 2012 and Windows Server 2012 R2 that will cause the average administrator any issues. Most of the features are deprecated and have been replaced by other functionality, so should not be too much of a concern. For graphics support, there is no longer any support for XDDM drivers. XDDM drivers were first introduced in Windows 98. With Windows Vista, a new standard was released called WDDM. This standard provided more reliability than XDDM and more features. Any modern video card will have device driver support for WDDM. In case it does not, Microsoft includes a WDDM Basic Display Only driver, which will upgrade graphics support for old video cards, so you should always be able to get a basic video display on Windows Server 2012 with any video card. Since Microsoft added the basic WDDM driver, there is no longer any native VGA support. This functionality is no longer required since the basic WDDM driver takes care of this, so this should not be a concern for the administrator. For Management Tools, Storage Explorer, and Storage Manager for SANS, Snap-in for MMC have been removed. This functionality is now available in Server Manager. There have been a lot of new features added to Windows Server 2012 in the way of storage, and thus this may be the reason these older management tools have been removed and their functionality moved into Server Manager. For the networking side, support for token ring networks has been removed. Token ring networks were first developed in the 1980s, but due to Ethernet popularity, Ethernet became the clear winner. Nowadays, you would be hard-pressed to find a token ring network, so this should not be a concern. The next three features all relate to the performance features or quality control in networking. You may not have heard of these features before, but they have been replaced by new features, or other features provide the same functionality. This should not be a concern for the average administrator. Next, the following two command line tools have been removed. OC List provides a list of installed features and roles on the server. This functionality is available in another command called DISM. Server Manager CMD has also been removed. Microsoft recommends that you use PowerShell to gain this functionality if you need it. This will be a concern if you have scripts that use these commands. You will need to modify these scripts in order to run them on Windows Server 2012. If you are using Active Directory Federation services, it may not be such an easy process to upgrade to Windows Server 2012. Windows Server 2012 comes with version 2.1 of ADFS. If you are using Windows Server 2008, it was originally shipped with version 1. However, version 2 could be downloaded later on and installed on Windows Server 2008. If you are upgrading from Windows Server 2008, you will need to check which version you have. If you have version 1.0, there is no upgrade path to 2.0. In order to do this, you must perform a migration. If you do decide to upgrade from version 2.0 to 2.1, do your research first. There is a lot to Federation services, and the upgrade process is not an easy one. The next point to consider is that there is no support for resource groups. A resource group is a security group generally used in a partner forest. Before you start using Federation services, make sure you remove any resource groups that are in use. Next, there is no support for NT token model. This is an old authentication system that was first used in Windows NT. It is no longer supported, so if this is being used with Federation services, this will need to be changed to a different authentication system. Lastly, Federation services no longer supports using Active Directory Lightweight Directory Services as an authentication store. This essentially means that ADLDS cannot be used to hold user accounts that are used in Federation services. If you are doing this, you will need to use a different storage system like Active Directory Domain Services. Next, Windows Server 2012 does not support SQL Server before version 7.0. This essentially means SQL Server 6.5 or below. 6.5 was released in 1996, so if you are still using that version, it needs to be updated anyway. Next, 32-bit cluster resource DLLs have been removed. There are 64-bit versions of these DLLs, so if you have software that uses the 32-bit DLLs, it will need to be upgraded or changed to use the 64-bit DLLs. The last feature that has been removed is Windows Help executable. This is used to read help files created using the old Windows Help file introduced in the first version of Windows. The replacement, CHM files, was first introduced in 1997. This will only be a problem if you are using old software that has old help files. The truth be known that Windows Server 2008 did not include the Windows Help executable either. The difference is that it could be obtained as an optional download from Microsoft. However, this is not the case for Windows Server 2012. It is available for Windows 8.1 and previous operating systems, so a workaround would be to use one of these operating systems to read the help file if you needed to. Nowadays, this should not be too much of a concern. If you decide to upgrade to Windows Server 2012 R2, there are a few features that have been removed. Like Windows Server 2012, the features are either old features that are not used that much or have been replaced by other features. On the software side, System Image Backup has been removed. This feature creates a copy of the drive, including all its data and the drivers on the system. Microsoft recommends File History be used instead. File History, however, only backs up certain folders, like the Documents and Desktop. For this reason, if you use System Image Backup for backups, it is worth looking into a different backup solution before making the move to Windows Server 2012 R2. The next feature that has been removed is recovery disk creation to CD or DVD. Recovery disk creation is still supported for USB. If you require a DVD recovery disk, a workaround is to boot the original setup DVD. This DVD contains an option to run recovery tools. The script slmanager.vbs has had these options removed. This script is used to activate Windows installations. The option stands for Set Token Activation Only and Clears Activation Tokens Only. Even though they have been removed, these options have been replaced by flexible activation command options, so you can still access the same functionality. The concern will be if you have written scripts that call these scripts with those options. When this video was created, according to the Microsoft website, the Windows Server Resource Manager had been removed from Windows Server 2012 R2. This is in fact incorrect. I know this because I installed it on Windows Server 2012 R2 myself and found it intact and working. Don't worry, I left feedback on their website to let them know. The next feature that has been removed is Subsystems for Unix. It is also not available as an optional download. This was a collection of software that helped run Unix-based software on Windows. If you require these kind of services on Windows, Microsoft recommends using other free software to provide these services or doing a port of the application to Windows. Either way, if you are using software that requires subsystems for Unix-based applications, you will need to do some testing to ensure that your application will work with Windows Server 2012 R2 and the solution you are using. Support for WinSock Direct has been removed. This has been replaced by Network Direct. Essentially, both are software that is used for remote direct memory access. You will only need to worry about this if you have software that requires WinSock Direct or are writing software that uses these features. Windows Server 2012 R2 now supports NDIS 6 and above. NDIS is a standard for application programming interface for networking used in network device drivers. For example, a mini-port driver may use the NDIS standard. The NDIS 6 standard was first introduced in Windows Vista, so there is a good chance your device drivers will support it. However, it is always a good idea to test all hardware and device drivers to ensure they work with Windows Server 2012 R2, as you would when installing any operating system. With Active Directory Federation Service, Microsoft states on their web page that version 1 Web Agent has been removed. I was not able to test if this was the case, so this feature may still be available. According to the Microsoft website, Windows Authorization Manager has been removed. However, I was able to access this in Windows Server 2012 R2. This may be a mistake on the website, but if you do use Windows Authorization Manager, it may be worthwhile to test to make sure it works in your environment, just in case. Before you start the upgrade process, there are some points to consider. Firstly, is all the hardware in the system compatible with the operating system you are upgrading to? Most device drivers for Windows Server 2008 should work with Windows Server 2012, but it is best to check just in case. Next, make sure that you have enough free hard drive space. The minimum requirement is a 32 GB drive. However, free space is of particular importance when performing an in-place upgrade. For this reason, make sure a fair amount of these 32 GB are free. Setup will prompt you if there is not enough free space, but it is not worth risking a failed upgrade if you are close to the minimum amount. The next point to consider is application compatibility. We have already seen that some features have been removed from Active Directory Federation services, which may be a concern. Other applications may not be compatible with Windows Server 2012 or Windows Server 2012 R2, and these should be checked. Next, you should disable virus software before the upgrade. Antivirus software can affect the upgrade process. Also, antivirus software can be very operating system specific. For this reason, it is best to disable it and then enable it afterwards and then upgrade it as required. If you have a UPS device, you should disconnect any management cables. You can still have the UPS connected to the computer during the upgrade. However, setup will attempt to detect any devices during the upgrade process and this can cause problems with the upgrade process. For this reason, it is best to disconnect the UPS management cables and reconnect them after the upgrade. The last point to remember is to perform a full backup of the operating system before the upgrade. In particular, with in-place upgrades, things can go wrong. Before the new operating system boots and you log in for the first time, you have the option to revert back to the previous operating system. However, if there are massive problems with the upgrade, you may be left with an unbootable system. Also, other problems may appear after the upgrade, like software incompatibility, that were not expected. It is worth the time to make a backup of the system in case something unexpected happens and you need to go back to the previous operating system. There is a lot to know before you perform an in-place upgrade, but the process itself is not a difficult one when everything goes right. In a later video, I will look at upgrading a Windows Server 2012 install to a Windows Server 2012 R2 install. Until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.